So I made the decision to leave a promising career and go back to school after 10 years of being out of school. I'd made this decision with a sound mind, but I was still concerned about certain aspects of it. One of those things was how old I was by this point. I was in my mid-30s. I hadn't been in school for 10 years. And of course, I was concerned about whether I would even adjust to the classroom environment. Had my brain become too rusty? How would I fit in with 22, 25-year-olds? All of those concerns I had. To make it worse, I was pivoting into a new field, information security, while my previous experience had been in development, aid sector, like social research side of things. I was interested in the intersection of the two, but I really had no background. I didn't have a computer science degree. I hadn't done any trainings, courses, nothing. And here I was going back to school after 10 years of working in development and aid sector and wanting to do a PhD in information security. So I was worried about how steep that learning curve might be, to add on to the fact that I was in my mid-30s and going to be the older student in class. And of course, nobody tells you exactly what it will be like, because this is something you have to experience yourself. But now that I'm 3 years into my PhD, I feel like I can talk about it because I've kind of got over the initial concerns and fears. And I've actually discovered that the fact that I had 10 years experience out of school contributed to me adjusting even better to the school environment. It surprised me, and that's what I want to talk about today. And I want to share with anyone who might be interested in going back to school or pivoting to a different career, whatever the thing is that you want to do after years of considering it. This is for you. And so now let's talk about being older and having the advantage of having dropped any and all sorts of performative airs. You know how back when you're younger in school, you treated every room or classroom opportunity as some kind of audition? Like, you didn't just need to know the information and the knowledge, you also needed to signal to your classmates that you knew what you were doing. So they'd give you these handouts and there were recommended books and things to read before the class, and you would go pour over those things and the material, not only to be able to put up your hand and say, yes, I can discuss this and impress the lecturer, but also to show your classmates that you're a serious person and you know what you're doing. But the thing is, when you've had like 10 plus years of being in a work environment, whether it's business, even if you took time off to just go have your children, you've really refined your ego. It's toned down quite a bit since that time. And so you just don't care about how you appear to others as much as you would have. And so this means that you're open to learning. And it also means that if you don't know things, you don't know them and you're okay with it. So for me, by the time I went to my PhD, I was okay with the fact that I didn't know a lot of the stuff. Remember, I went to do a PhD in information security. I don't have a computer science degree, nothing. So I really was there to learn, and there was nothing to be gained by appearing to know more than I actually did. I remember this one time we had a reading group and it was my turn to present a paper, and I had been assigned a cryptography paper. And if you know anything about cryptography, you'll know that you need to know the things. You can't just pretend to know them. And I didn't. So what I did is I asked a colleague whose entire background was that to coach me. We went over the paper, I read it, I understood what I did. I knew I didn't understand a great deal of it. She sat down with me, took me through, told me this is how I should present it. These are the questions I should ask. And I went into that paper discussion confident because I had had this time with her. But even then, half of the things I said were straight out of my colleague's mouth, not mine. And the advantage with being older, I feel, is that you know that you don't know these things and it's okay. You're not trying to impress anyone. After all, you came to school, you returned to the school environment purely for yourself. A really big one is the absolute clarity of purpose that you have when you go back to school at a later stage. So a lot of times your first degree, like when you decided to go do your bachelor's, there was some influence from your parents, some of us from your ancestors' unfulfilled hopes and dreams. There were a lot of other factors that determined what course you studied or even the fact that you went in the first place. But when you decide to go back to school after 10 or so years, this is purely a you project. It's you who sat down and decided, I'm going to pause my career, I'm going to take a break, and I'm going to go upskill or completely go in a different direction. So you don't need too many external motivation factors. You've kind of got that going intrinsically, and it's great. You don't need someone to call you up and wake you up and read for this paper. Oh, we have an exam on this date. Can you remember to do this? Let's join this discussion group, because if you don't join that discussion group, you will never study. That was the case with like your first degree or bachelor's. But at this point, if you go back to do a PhD or a different master's, even a bachelor's degree after many years of being out of school, you're kind of really, really clear about what you came to do at school. So you put your head down and study and do the work because you want to do the work. And now I must talk about the dreaded feedback. Now, feedback gets a bad reputation in academia, and sometimes that reputation is deserved, because you will write one page of material and you receive one page of comments. You do the math, it's a lot of work. But receiving feedback as a 45, 35-year-old older student, I feel is a bit different from a 20, 18, 19-year-old. I can see how feedback on a paper would make a younger person crumble. There's an aspect of internalizing feedback and thinking it's about you. But I feel like when you're older and you've matured, you understand that your professors or your supervisor on a PhD is just interested in your work. The entire relationship is about the work. There are no personal issues there. The feedback is not directed at you. It doesn't say much about your capabilities. It's really about improving the work. When you can receive feedback in that way, it's amazing. I've had the pleasure of actually enjoying the painful feedback process. I mean, there are things I do to make it easier on myself. For example, if it's a 20-page document, I'm not going to read all the feedback at once. I'll read one page, see how I'm going to address that page, and move on to the next. That's just how I keep things measured for myself. But you come up with your ways, but it's on the whole, you know that the feedback is not about you individually or your personality or your skills or your abilities. It's really about improving the work. And I feel like you can take that better as an older student than a younger one. And then, of course, I hadn't spent this entire 10 years since my master's just working, right? There are so many other life experiences that I've had in that time that I feel have matured me so much. One of them being parenting, and how I've learned so much patience and adaptability, and all of the skills I got from parenting, I was able to bring into the classroom setting. And then there's this shifted perspective that can only come from failing several times and picking yourself back again. So I feel like when you're older, you've not just failed at different things in the workplace, but you've also encountered difficulties and challenges in life. And I speak of failure as a factual thing, not anything negative or positive, just that you tried to do something and that thing didn't work. You tried to start a course, try to start a business, start a relationship. All the ways that life has taught you that failure is not the end of everything. I mean, you're kind of like a testament, because here you are at 40 years old going back to school. So it's proof that that one time when you failed your biology paper and thought that the world was ending, it didn't end. So I think time gives you that proof of the idea that failure is not the end of everything, that you can fail and fail again and fail again, and it's fine. So it just means that when you come back to school and you're getting a bad grade, your whole world is not ending. And that's not to say that failure won't shake you when you're back in school. Yes, you'll have a day or two or some time of feeling really low about your paper being rejected. But you'll also know that there's going to be another time to do another paper, and that this is not the end of the world. I suppose what I'm saying is that when you're older, you've failed enough times to know that this failure you're experiencing now in school is not the end of the world. And there's something liberating about approaching school like that. It's just like, it's serious, but it's also not that serious. And then, of course, a lot of these things that I'm talking about sound really abstract, but there is also benefits to going back to school that's applicable to the actual work in school, especially with a PhD, which is really designed like your own project. So you've spent a lot of time out of school working on different projects. I mean, even if it's not projects, whatever tasks you've been working on, you had to organize, you had to plan, you had to prioritize, you had to set out timelines for delivering certain things. You've got accustomed to deadlines and trying to beat them. So that discipline of repeating such tasks and repeating projects and doing them and delivering them and moving to the next one is exactly what you need when you go back to do a PhD or a master's, because You're organizing your tasks. You know, at the end of it all, you want to finish this degree, you want to submit this thesis. So you're working backwards to schedule those tasks and deliverables towards that main goal. And I feel like the workplace and life in general gives you the opportunity to practice that. So by the time you go back to school, to be honest, this is much easier for you than it would have been when you were younger. And of course, I say all this and can see how it can look quite abstract and, it's a concept of how you're going to cope better. But in reality, there is that moment or a couple of them when you go to campus for the first time and you see all the girls all dressed in these baggy clothes that the youngins are wearing, and you're wearing your skinny jeans because unfortunately you were born in the 80s. And you're like, wait, what? I'm really the oldest one here? But then, you keep it moving, and then you go to class and you sit down and you look around and everyone just looks young. They're not going around introducing themselves as, hi, I'm Peter, I'm 21. No, but you glean what their ages are from the experiences that they're sharing, and when you're exchanging backgrounds, and it dawns on you quite quickly that you are indeed the oldest one here, and it's fine. And for me, in my particular cohort, not only was I among the oldest, I was also the only parent. Like everyone else is child-free, and I'm the one who has 2 kids. So it also just means it's a different classroom experience. But you soon realize that it really doesn't matter because you're all coming from such different backgrounds. So if the chip on your shoulder is the age thing and being out of school for a long time, for someone else it's that they're in a new course or that they're in a new country. It's all kinds of things. And so understanding that everyone comes into this classroom, this school environment with their own thing is relieving. So for anyone who's been telling themselves that it's been too long, I'm too old, I've done too many years in this particular career, or I'm on track to, continue this path, even though you do feel like you need something more challenging, I'm here to say that you can make that move at any age. You can challenge yourself at any stage of your life. I suppose the biggest lesson for me in all of this is that my age and all the time that had passed did not exactly diminish my capacity to learn. In fact, I feel that it enhanced it somehow, because here I was coming back to school, a more resilient person, someone who has a certain discipline about their work, and someone who has a depth of understanding that a classroom could not have offered me. So if you've been worrying about being too old and all the things you've been doing that are completely unrelated to what you want to return to school for, I think you should start thinking about how all of those things have actually prepared you well for a return to school. I'd love to hear your story. If you've made that change in your life, if you're thinking about making a change in your life, what's the change? Do share. Thank you.